Hello, everyone, and welcome. I know we're right at the hour, so we'll let people join, but thank you, everyone, for joining us. So, we have a really exciting panel today where we'll be focused on the role of AI in workplace knowledge sharing, which is hosted by our wonderful partner, Pair Up. And Pair Up is a AI-backed knowledge sharing engine. All right, so we're really excited for everyone to join. In our audience today, we're going to have about 200 participants across the field of software technology, finance and banking, media and entertainment, the public sector, health sector, and more. So, welcome to everyone. We hope you are excited about this topic. I know there's a lot of energy around AI in particular. But we all know that AI is not the solution for everything. AI is a support that enables or helps address the core problem. And today we're going to address core problems in knowledge sharing. Okay. What I'll name for you all of our participants, is there is an option to submit questions and answers. So if you look at the Q&A box, feel free to put those in there and we will try to answer some of those towards the end of our call. Okay. All right, well, first, let me start with my own personal introduction. So, I'm Tanisha Parrish, and I'm the CEO of Life Under Innovation, which is an executive coaching and leadership development company where we really focus on unlocking human potential for organization impact. And I'm very passionate about this space because it really speaks to connection amongst humans within the workplace. And then I get the pleasure of serving as moderator for our discussion today with our amazing panelists. We have June Chin, Jonathan Lavalve, Dana Tessier, and Dr. Emily Harburg. So welcome to you all. All right, so let's start with a brief introduction. I know that bios were sent out for the session. We will have each person do just a brief introduction, and then we're going to dive right into the Q&A since I know there's a lot of rich conversation that will come out of our panelists today. So let's start with June Chin, and I'll have you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your role and your background and why you're particularly passionate about this topic.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm June Chen. I'm currently head of IT and security with Glassdoor. I have had about 30 years of experience in this field and super passionate about knowledge sharing, knowledge management. For it creates equal opportunities for people to grow, to contribute. And that's one of the reasons why I'm super passionate about it. And the other reason is on the flip side. Why is it so hard? Why can't people make it work? So let's talk about it.
All right, we're definitely going to talk about it, June. Thank you. Dana.
Thanks, Tanisha. Hi, I'm Dana Tessier. I'm the Director of Knowledge Management at Shopify, and I've been in the knowledge management space for almost 2 decades. So I share some of June's frustrations, but also a lot of excitement and passion about connecting people to the knowledge they need when they need it. And I think that really unlocks the potential of organizations to achieve more than the sum of their parts. So really excited for our conversation today and to see where we end up solving some problems.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dana. All right, we will pass the introduction mic to Jonathan.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Lavab. I'm a professor of marketing at Stanford Graduate School of Business. I guess I don't necessarily work in knowledge management, but I think about what are barriers to adoption of products and psychology of decision making. I guess my job technically is to impart knowledge. I don't know if I know how to manage it, but I'm sort of here to talk about sort of a little bit what we know about consumer behavior and how it impacts the adoption of some of these technologies.
All right, and Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily Harburg, and I'm the CEO and co-founder at PairUp, and so excited about this discussion and so grateful for the panelists for being here. My background is in a combination of technology and social psychology, and I've had the chance to really feel some of the pains, maybe not the chance, I've felt the pains of knowledge sharing across larger organizations at Disney and at Facebook Meta, and as well as a large corporation called EF. And so I've just seen some of the challenges of the duplication of work that can happen. And then also in this theme that June shared and others is, I think there's a lot of the challenges of getting the help that you need within organizations, and how can we make that process more equitable and easy to access. So I did my PhD studying that combination of psychology and computer science, and specifically looking at tools for workplace collaboration. So excited to bring the research and also some of the practices that we're learning and the applications that we're finding.
Welcome to all of our panelists. So before we jump in, I just want to set the tone with two stats that I think are really interesting. The first one is the average interaction worker spends an estimated 28% of their work week managing email, and nearly 20% looking for information, trying to track down colleagues to help with a specific task. And this comes from a McKinsey study from 2012. So just think about that. Almost a quarter of your work week is spent tracking down information. Okay. There's a second stat that I thought was quite interesting, which is $4.5 million is lost annually to companies failing to preserve and share knowledge. And this comes from the Center for American Progress. So we're speaking and we're going to talk about the human side as well as the system and the data side of it. And I thought those statistics were quite alarming. So there's a huge opportunity in this space of knowledge sharing, not only focusing on the productivity, the effectiveness, the time management of it, but also how do we make sure organizations are effective, right, from a financial side. And I know a financial lens is always important to every business. So this issue is very applicable to every organization of every size, from a small to medium-sized business to startups to large organizations. So we're hoping there's some common themes that come out of this. All right, so let's dive in. The first question is, one, why is knowledge sharing important yet so hard? And I'll start with you, June.
You caught me that I had mixed feelings about this topic. There's plenty of need for knowledge and desire to share, but why is it so hard? In my experience, I have experienced a lot of challenges over the years in different companies, and it pretty much revolves around the inability to effectively identify and communicate with knowledge holders, and also incomplete documentation of experienced staff's tacit knowledge, and also lack of content curation leading to outdated and confusing information. And lastly, what I see is that using the wrong metrics to measure success. That there is this general misconception that knowledge management is about technology, when in reality, knowledge management is really an organizational discipline enabled by technology. As a result, there's this need to emphasize on creating a structure to manage the life cycle of knowledge, from conversing, from capturing, from curating, and circulating, all of which need engagement from people to make process and technology sustainable for effectively managing the framework. My opinion really is the lack of knowledge sharing discipline in an organization will create this disadvantage of slower innovation and more operational frictions, and lower employee engagement, and possibly poor or slow decision making. So let's start with that.
Yes, thank you, June. I'd love to get your perspective, Dana, given that you are the director of knowledge management. Why is it important, and why is it so hard for organizations to get right?
Yeah, thanks, Tanisha. And June, I do share some of your frustrations. I think it is really difficult to do knowledge management well. And I think that a lot of people haven't seen it done well. And so they're coming in with some biases and some, concerns just from the start of how successful this initiative will be, and what it will really turn into. And so for me, I think what works well is when that knowledge sharing task is a part of the work. So it's in the flow of the work, it's how the work gets done, and the organizational, leadership and incentives and all the different, processes in place support that as the successful way to do our work here is we share our knowledge. And to address specifically, Tanisha, what you said about, what's the cost if we don't do this right, or what happens? There's kind of a famous story of how NASA lost the knowledge to go to the moon, and they can no longer rebuild that rocket that went to the moon. And I did see a presentation many years ago, and someone from NASA was calling this out, and they mentioned, yes, of course, we would use new technology now. We probably wouldn't use the technology from the 60s to rebuild that rocket. But if NASA can no longer go to the moon, are we still NASA? And so that cost of lost knowledge, not only can it impact, that double work that needs to happen, and all those lessons learned that are lost that need to be, reinvested in. So there's a cost to that, but also almost that corporate identity and that corporate memory, and how that can impact just the culture and your ability to execute on your goals. So there's a lot of different impacts that some are tangible and some of them are just intangible.
Yeah, what a great story with the NASA example. Dana, I'll stay with you. I'm curious, both you and June mentioned the theme of organizational discipline. Can you tell me from your experience what is working within the knowledge sharing space, and what are the best practices? How do you embed this discipline into an organization?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the best knowledge management strategies that I have seen are the ones that are tied to true business priorities. And so we're not knowledge sharing for knowledge sharing's sake. We're not doing this for, to be friends with everyone and to share our tips and tricks. We're doing this to achieve an organizational goal that we're being measured upon and that we believe is going to bring the organization forward. So it has a real purpose. It has a real connection to the purpose of the organization and what they're trying to do. And then we embed that in the way that the work gets done. And there are simple ways of doing this, like a really simple example is the GitHub archiver that came out. So in Slack channels, you can just capture content right away and put it in your GitHub issue. So any decisions that are made or anything like that can be captured in something that you're already using to manage your work and to manage your project. And then there's a lot more wonderful, complex examples. But any way that we can do that in the flow of the work, so it doesn't feel like an extra task, or it doesn't feel like this burden on top of what I already have to get done, all of those will be inhibitors to the work. And one final comment on that is, what are your organizational incentives? If I'm, compensated for how quickly I'm getting something done, or how many things I'm getting done in the day, and if those things are not knowledge sharing, that's going to get in the way of me contributing to the knowledge sharing task and will prevent us from seeing true adoption in that behavior. And so some of these organizational culture things that are longstanding can really get in the way. And so we need to have a holistic look at our culture and our cultural enablers when we're thinking about knowledge sharing, and what will properly move that forward, or what might inhibit progress in that space.
Okay, thank you. I also, I just saw a question come through, and I want to make sure that we're all speaking the same language, right? Go back to the basics. And I always love a very basic question of what is knowledge sharing and what's knowledge management, right? And how are those different? So we put it in the Q&A, but I'd love for maybe Dana and Emily, you to share your perspective. So knowledge management is how information is documented, but also stored and shared within a company. So I'd love if you could just speak to any nuances or different perspectives that you have on what is knowledge management versus knowledge sharing.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I saw that pop up and I'm like, that is, and it's a lot of times these buzzwords are overly complex, but I do think they're really critical that we all feel aligned around. And I think, at least in my own opinion, I think there's knowledge management is often the processes in place and the systems in place to really help to store the critical knowledge that is within organizations. And often, again, I would argue a lot of that knowledge isn't well documented. So we need better knowledge management practices to ensure that we are retaining that and it's not lost when someone leaves an organization. And then knowledge sharing is often the process in which that knowledge is being shared and spread across an organization. So we may have tools for it, but are we actually tapping into it and sharing that and accessing that easily? So that's how I would start to define those two, but curious if others have other thoughts. Dana.
Oh, thanks, Emily. Yeah, I agree with that. I think knowledge sharing is a subset of the whole knowledge management processes and practices.
And just while we have you all here, what role does collaboration and team dynamics play into this concept of knowledge sharing?
I mean, knowledge sharing is a human behavior, right? And so we're not, I think I said this before, we're not sharing knowledge for knowledge's sake. We're doing this to help other humans in their day-to-day and their tasks, or helping your future self remember how you did something as well. And so I think collaboration needs to be at the core of any knowledge management strategy. To pull on what you said earlier, Tanisha, about connection, right? We're trying to connect people and to connect ideas and to connect work. And knowledge management needs collaboration to do that.
Yeah. I always say, just in my experience with business, we always talk about numbers and strategies, but all roads lead back to people. And so even something that may sound, as processy as knowledge management comes back to the human. Okay. So thank you all for expanding on that. I'd love to continue and maybe bring in a piece of AI. AI is what excites people right now. So Jonathan, give me a perspective of what makes you excited about AI in the workplace and what makes you weary about it.
What makes me excited? I'll give you an answer in the context of an answer we just heard from Dana, which has to do with sort of one of the key factors in a product or any kind of behavior being adopted is the degree to which it's compatible with whatever set of existing behaviors or technologies or products that people already engage in and purchase. And so what Dana pointed out, she says, listen, this thing works if it like is part of what I don't have to make an extra step in order to be able to take this knowledge that I have and share it with some system. It's just in the course of my work, it happens. And the hope from AI is that you now have a technology that has the ability to understand things in the context of that work and scoop out what's relevant and park it somewhere that then becomes easily accessible in the natural language that someone who's a consumer of it would need. And so to me, that's the great hope. Is like, imagine, before AI, like you yap on the Slack channel and you'd have to have somebody monitoring and saying, oh, that's important, let's park it. And then also let's categorize it so that categorize it, not just categorize it, but categorize it in a way that afterwards someone knows to retrieve it based on the category, title. And that's next to impossible. It just doesn't, and kind of, I guess that's the reason to me, if I just look at these technologies, that's the reason for the failure. What AI does is that AI basically says, I'm now gonna actually enable, I'm gonna capture the knowledge and analyze the knowledge and make it available without you having to do extra work. That's, to me, that's the big hope. What's the big fear? I don't know. I mean, I think there's I guess all kinds of fears, but I think the biggest fear in any of these kind of systems is garbage in, garbage out. The system is only as good as the data that's fed into it that it learns from. And so there's this kind of sense right now is like, oh, there's this magic thing. It's called artificial intelligence, and it's kind of all-knowing. No, it isn't all-knowing. It's all-knowing given that it learned based on something. And if it learned based on the wrong thing, then it's going to give you the wrong kind of output. And to the extent that we grow more and more dependent on it and take AI's answers for granted more and more, but we don't pay attention to the body of knowledge that model is based on, right? Then that's when you get into trouble. And how to solve that, I think, is a way bigger issue that, as humanity, as societies, not just businesses, we're going to have to solve.
Yes. What I hear you naming as a nuance is accuracy is key to knowledge management, and AI can be a potential tool to help support that. I'm going to put a pin in that for a moment because I want to continue.
Well, actually, there's two things. You hear me say two things. There's two factors you have to think about is accessibility and diagnosticity. What do I mean by that? The knowledge needs to be available, and then the knowledge has to be relevant to the problem that I need to solve. Technology can, if designed correctly, can solve both the accessibility and diagnosticity problem. If it just solves the diagnosticity problem, but not the accessibility problem, then you're going to have a system that's really good at predicting things, but without anybody understanding how to use it. If you have a system that's easy to access, but gives me garbage, then I'm going to be consuming a lot of knowledge, but it'll be garbage knowledge.
Mhm.
So it's both of those things that have to happen.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. June, I see you nodding. Would you like to chime in? Kind of how do we harness AI for good in this current environment?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I'm hearing that resonates with me is the human part.
Mhm.
I find that AI enables us to do a lot of things, particularly in areas that encourages and promotes inclusiveness in our culture, meaning that we value a learner curiosity as much as we respect subject matter experts. And it allows us to create this space for those who need knowledge to connect with those who possess it, but also allow us to embrace experimenting with evolving technology. I am personally less scared about asking not the best, not the smartest questions because I mean, it's AI, it's less judgy, right? And I totally get the garbage in, garbage out. So no doubt that we need to curate and do all the right things to have good data. But as a human, I feel unleashed that nobody's judging me. I'm just asking my, imaginary best friend that and help me iterate my questions, and eventually I get the answers close to what I want. Um, However, I also wear a security hat, so I am super watchful for our ability to scale the privacy and security controls to protect the threats against the data and the vulnerabilities in the systems and the model. But to me, it's really about being proactive, about governing the use of AI for regulatory compliance, etc. I'm sorry, the security hat just makes me want to say that. Okay. But harnessing AI in the workplace is like a it's like you watch a very well choreographed dance where
Mhm.
AI and humans move in harmony and each complementing each other's move and steps to create that seamless and powerful performance. We're experimenting. And I think just by participating in this panel already enabled me doing more research and be less afraid about AI and AI in knowledge management.
Thank you. I'm curious to get Emily's perspective as well, because I know you've wrestled with both the human side, AI, how you can address this in the context of knowledge sharing. So what's your perspective
Yeah.
on the role of AI?
Totally. And I love June. I can see that dance. Like, I think that you're nailing it. That's to me, it's got to be in the middle, and it's got to be something that as we're building, we're thinking about humans as we build the technology, but also thinking about the human opinion as we're kind of pulling in the right information at the right time. Also, there's some interesting research around people feel more comfortable asking ChatGPT a question than their colleague. There's just a lot of psychological safety in not feeling like you're asking a bad question and feeling like you can get that answer and it won't be shown to others and you can learn. And a lot of times people are really doing a lot of duplicative work because they're afraid to ask if others have done it within an organization. So how can we actually both make it safer to ask for help and get the answers that you need as quickly as possible? I think we're at least, and we'll give a little sneak peek at the end of the webinar of just how we're kind of solving for this too. So I don't want to overly give it away, but we are, the way that we've been really thinking about it within Parap is that in this dance between the two has been, how do we leverage the information that exists within organizations as quickly as possible and use AI to kind of bring that to the surface, but also leverage the right people within an organization who hold that critical knowledge? And so we think it's got to be both. It's both showing where the information lies and trying to get that to you, but also saying these are people that you should talk to who know more, or if you need more context, let's learn that context from them, because we just know a lot of, the minute you document something, often it's outdated the next day. And also also there's often 20 documents that are doing this, that say the same thing or may be slightly different, and knowing which one is correct. So that's where we're also finding the human feedback cycle is so critical, and doing it as efficiently as possible. And Dana, as you were sharing, like in line with the workflow already as seamlessly as possible, but it can't just be like, here's the answer because AI gave you the answer. Like, I think the more that we can provide the nuance and the right connections for greater clarity, I think the better.
All right, we're getting a couple questions around change management, so I want to bring that into the fold here. And maybe we start with Dana. Um, what's the role of leadership in change management and knowledge sharing, and how do you bring and get buy-in from your leadership to make this investment?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. And it is hard. So just want to preface it with that. There's no one size fits all for these types of concerns. But leadership has to play a crucial role in the change management for knowledge sharing. And I think we have to really understand what our audience is going through. So in the past, knowledge sharing, knowledge management already would sometimes trigger fears in the workforce due to, if I give you all my knowledge, then am I still valuable to the organization, or am I redundant? And then you add in the fears of, AI is going to take my job, coupled with, knowledge sharing. You have a workforce that might be very fearful and lack an understanding of the why of this initiative. And so leadership needs to paint a vision of not only what is the future of our tech stack, why is this new tool exciting, but also what role will us people play, and how will that impact our day-to-day and still lead us to have a very valuable and impactful role at this organization. And I think that for the knowledge management leaders on the call, getting that right sponsorship from an executive and having the business be the one leading the change. It's not coming from knowledge management, it's not coming from HR, it's not coming from IT, it's coming from the business leaders in that group that you're supporting, and the employees are hearing that from them. It can be much more compelling than having a support role person or this kind of secondary team be leading this initiative, because that person can also really tie it once again to those business priorities and what it will mean to be successful at that organization, and ensure that there's no conflicting messages coming that would then prevent the adoption of this new way of working or this new tool. And then lastly, that the value of that two-way communication. So ensuring that as we're in, the early adoption phase, as we're rolling things out, that there's places for teams to engage with the tool, try it out in like a non-risky way, and give feedback and have that feedback be actioned. That can also be a really great way of building trust with the group that's adopting these new strategies and tools, and that can build a much better relationship. This all goes back to the human, as we've been saying, build those better relationships and increase your overall adoption and success.
Thank you, Dana. And you mentioned that you've been working in the knowledge management world for about 20 plus years. You're in a role that is specifically focused on knowledge management. Is that a relatively new role? What is the responsibility of an organization to have someone or a team dedicated to this function?
Yeah, so well, I've been doing this role for 9 years, so I don't know we could say that was new, but there are very few of us out there. We need to start a club or something. But you don't meet a lot of other directors of knowledge management, although I have met a few, and they are some of my favorite people. But I think it really depends on that organization and what they're valuing and what are the challenges that are coming up for them at that time. Just to speak to Shopify directly, I joined at a time, when we were about to scale quite a bit. We had folks that had just started working remotely in a distributed environment. This is way before the pandemic. And so we really did need to invest in how people were going to know what to do and how they're going to get access to that information as quickly as possible as we scaled and we served more and more of our customers. So going back to what is the business priority, right? It was really critical to the business at that time, and it's grown since then. And it's been important for me to stay connected to those priorities as, we solve some problems, new problems pop up. It's just the fun of scaling business. So how do we stay connected to what those new problems are and transform alongside the business and stay relevant and stay supporting them? So of course, now everything we're doing is with AI and enabling that and ensuring that, we have the right, to what Jonathan was saying, do we have the right data? Do we have the right knowledge to support these new strategies? So that's where we're focusing now.
Okay. And we mentioned metrics earlier in the conversation. How do you measure success of knowledge management? What
Yeah.
what do you look to see we've made progress, we've made these investments, and we're getting the results that we're looking for?
Measuring knowledge management is one of the most difficult things I think you can do. But that's one of the things that I'm excited about with AI, for two reasons. One, I do think with AI, we can pull in more signals to understand how knowledge is being used and therefore the impact and the value of that knowledge that was captured. That can give us a lot more understanding of true impact and success. And second, because there are so many new initiatives with AI, we're not just bringing in machine learning specialists and engineers, we're bringing in data scientists and front end and back end engineers, and these folks can all improve knowledge management strategy and help us measure things more accurately, where in years prior there may not have been that same investment to do so. But one of the most impactful ways I've seen throughout my career, and I've talked to a lot of other knowledge management professionals about this, is the value of storytelling. And so oftentimes, because there's so many variables in knowledge management, so many things change, you can kind of capture that moment of success with a story and have that become part of your organizational knowledge and your institution. It can become so valuable, and that can be weigh into those executive sponsors as well. And those stories do need to be updated over time, but that can be a compelling way to kind of bring about success and show success, and then breed more of it. Success breeds success.
Okay. Let me check in with the rest of the panelists. Anyone have a perspective on how they're measuring or best practices that they've seen within their organizations?
I can share a little bit of, I mean, we've been looking a lot at different ways to document this because it's how we show to companies that we can really help them and serve their needs. And so, yeah, I think, well, just to the last point, Dana, about storytelling, we're finding that even hearing one story of, I had a question and I was afraid to ask it, and I was able to go into the system and ask, and then I was connected to two people who could help me, and I had no idea that they even existed, even though we're in the same office. I think that sometimes those stories are actually more powerful than saying we got them an answer in 4 seconds, because those are really where it changes the way you work, and then the future of those relationships in the company, which may lead to then, them taking on another role, or, kind of all kinds of growth that can happen in the company because of relationships and knowledge being shared. And I'm personally passionate about, a lot of times knowledge is quite biased by who you know and who you happen to sit near, or who you happen to have as a boss. And so we've been really looking at, can we break down those biases of knowledge transfer, which I think is where one of the many ways I think AI is really exciting and how it can help us. But I think some of the other metrics we're looking at are, what are the questions that are not being answered? What are the gaps in knowledge? What are the, resources that people are updating but actually shouldn't be updated? People aren't even needing those answers, but it's just taking a lot of time to be updating them. So those are some of the other types of metrics that we can show, which I think both save time and also bring the kind of invisible more visible for organizations.
Okay, thank you. There's a really interesting question which goes back to the beginning, in bringing in the stats that we introduced. So the question from one of our audience members is, and June, maybe I'd love your perspective on this, given your role, and see how that's impacting your organization. So we're losing a ton of organizational knowledge due to retirement of boomers and Gen Xers. Many organizations have difficulty capturing and managing their experience. What thoughts do you have about leveraging AI to capture and manage this valuable information?
Yeah. I think every generation has a different preference in terms of learning, or even every person. Using me as an example, that I'm getting used to using AI note takers from meetings, Zoom or whatever, right? And then you feed a transcript from this remote hybrid collaboration tool into Gen AI to make knowledge more dynamically and more user friendly. And it really enhances the productivity and fostering faster innovation and even updates. So in so many ways, I feel there is a leading by example that because the it's safer that you give it a try, this experimenting culture and layering the tools that you have available to you to create a faster learning and sharing is super important. So this dog fooding and leading by example is what leadership can bring to the table. As Emily said, there is this bias, right? There are times I felt like I can get stuff done faster because I can get knowledge faster. I have a team. I could just ask. I never really have to use the knowledge management system. But if I don't use it, why will other people use it? So dog fooding your product or your team's product is super important because you feedback that feedback for them to improve.
Mhm. Yeah, I think what this question brings out is one of the challenges and maybe even reasons that investing in knowledge management is important. So whether it's generational, we have these gaps, right? Some of the tailwinds that are moving us forward and investing in the space, remote and hybrid work. We're in different spaces, so we can't access information as quickly as maybe potentially being in person. If people are entering and exiting the company for whatever reason, right? That's a clear opportunity and a gap that is costing money, but also speed and time and productivity. And Emily, I know you've again spent some time in this space. I'd love to hear your perspective on what are like the key roadblocks to having strong knowledge management in place.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, you brought up a topic that I think, and Jonathan, with remote work, I think would be curious your weigh in on it, because I think one of the challenges right now we are seeing is in a more distributed workforce, even if folks are coming into the office, if they're not near the right people, or they're not, the manager's actually not in there when they're going in. So I think there's also additional hurdles that we're just facing right now with this new world of work, where you're not overhearing the conversations that you might get that knowledge, or at the water cooler, or kind of the moments where that knowledge is being shared more easily and kind of more frictionlessly. So I think one of the things that we've been looking at is just how do you create this into the flow and make this more seamless. And so even with our system, we're sitting in Slack and Teams and just trying to be where you are, asking questions that are just relevant to you in a very fast way, in a way that's going to just not feel like a burden of, I know one of my companies in the past, we had to like every month go in and update the knowledge base as a team. And it was really time intensive, and people always just put it off or canceled it on their schedules, or just had another meeting that conflicted, and then that practice didn't really happen. And so how do we make this more in stream of conscious and relevant to an actual question? Like even our tool will say, 12 people have this question right now. Is this something that you could answer? And so just ways to kind of help make it more relevant and more human and real, as well as more in line with what your flow of work as well. But I don't know, Jonathan, if you had any thoughts kind of from the research lens too, of just seeing with this transition too of remote hybrid.
So I think that the transition to remote makes something like knowledge management from a nice to have to potentially a need to have. And so that's like I mean, if you ever had like a fetish for knowledge management, now would be the time you should celebrate because it's like this is the moment. And so this is the moment, and you're onboarding people. And so kind of now is the opportunity, because because the alternative is either not having knowledge or having acquisition of knowledge that's so cumbersome and so costly that you say, no, I rather just ask whatever system, AI or whatever it is, and use it. And so like to me, that's the big opportunity. The opportunity is enabled by artificial intelligence, but it's not because of artificial intelligence. The move to hybrid work and the commonality of hybrid work now makes it potentially a need to have. But as organizations, you have to understand that hybrid work is actually a different kind of work. It's not doing the same thing, but now we're talking through a screen, but it's actually a different modality, whatever you name it, and that requires sort of different tools, which might mean subtracting a bunch of tools that we're already using in favor of this other tool. You know, as heretical as it might sound, maybe it's time, you get rid of Slack and instead you just use a knowledge management tool. I mean, different things have to happen now. And so kind of that's the opportunity. I guess that's my view on it.
Okay. Yeah, I love the nice to have to a need to have. And what we're naming is, again, all the complexities that are at play externally to the company, but then internally as well.
I want to, so I think part of what's nice to have and what's neat to have, sometimes there are things that are exogenous and sometimes it's things that are built into a culture. Some things that are neat to have in one culture are not neat to have in another culture. If you're an organization that has a debriefing culture, which most organizations don't have, unfortunately, then a knowledge management system is a natural need to have. And it's the culture of the organization serves that. If you're an organization that doesn't debrief, which is the vast majority of the people that I see, then knowledge management feels like an appendage. And so there's a lot of things that you can do as an organization to support the viability of having a successful knowledge management system that's independent of just technology. It's really about your orientation towards how work gets done. So that was I think that paired with this move to remote work can create the conditions in which systems like this can become more relevant than what they've been.
Mm-hmm.
I really love what Jonathan said about culture, that when I reminisce about the water cooler conversation, it's thinking about the water cooler conversation by itself is lack of formality. And so how do we amplify that using AI and then make that conversation has more impact and less formal, and not having to go determine the needs? Do I need to write this down? And just make that knowledge available, less formal about it, and then emphasize on the culture, because Gen AI's ability to turn byproduct of these normal interactions into structured language, structured knowledge assets is what's going to help us move faster, in my opinion.
I think that there's people's perceived need for it, and then there's the things that are going to enable it. And I think that those are two different things. I sort of, as I listen to all the comments in June's most recent one, it makes me think a little bit about just people's savings accounts, right? And saving behavior in general. Right. So knowledge management is a form of organizational savings. And it's because it's something I set aside for some future benefit. In the same way that when you save money, it's an intertemporal decision between consuming something now and having a resource that you'll be able to consume later. And so the way people save is when you're more likely to get them to save under two conditions. One, they have to have a specific goal in mind. And the second thing is, the more you can make the savings passive, the more likely they are to save. And so the AI can enable you to make the save, it's the analogy of making it passive, because this thing is working in the background. And what I mean by passive is, for instance, you have to opt out of contributing to your 401k. So the AI is kind of working in the background. That's that passive form. But the active part needs to come from sort of the organization's kind of establishing a culture that both celebrates and requires the use of organizational knowledge. So it's kind of two things. And I can have an amazing savings product in a bank and it's going to have no uptake, because people don't understand the importance of savings. And similarly here, you can have just these amazing technologies. There's so many great tools out there that Silicon Valley produces that people buy and nobody uses. It's because it's not supported by the, forget Gen AI, the people thing, management. So that's kind of, as I input all these comments, just trying to put at least a framework that I think helps me understand why this might work and not work.
Okay. Thank you. Good discussion. I have two questions that I'd love to do kind of a round robin. If you think of this as the lightning round, if you will, maybe not so intense. So the first question is around trends. What are you most excited about in terms of trends or tips that you're seeing in the market around how to improve and have a really strong knowledge management and knowledge sharing system or culture? And I'll start with you, Dana.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, so I guess there's two for me, and we've spoken about them a little bit. One is the ability to increase knowledge capture, and to combine that knowledge capture with signals that help us find knowledge that we couldn't find before. And when I say signals, I mean like, how many times was this article used, and how many times did it then, generate some sort of escalation or some additional work because the answer wasn't contained in that one article. Getting, much better understanding of how that knowledge is performing, I think will really help us better capture and better share. And that kind of goes to the second one as well. When we're understanding better how knowledge is used, captured, shared, it will help us measure the value and the impact more. And maybe that will help us convert more and more folks over to that savings mentality. I loved that analogy, Jonathan. We can turn more people into knowledge savers than we have now. And that would be a really exciting next step for this industry.
Thank you, Dana. What about you, June?
I think I'll take the easy way out by echoing what Dana said and adding that it's the speed by which this cycle moves much faster to enable us to have the relevant information, relevant knowledge to do our work. That makes me excited.
And Jonathan, what are some trends you're excited about?
Trends I'm excited about. I have more trends I'm fearful of than ones that I'm excited about.
Okay.
Yes.
You can share those as well. Fears are real, and I know a lot of people are thinking about the same thing.
I think, and I think it came up a little bit, which is that the easiest place to go, our safe space or our happy place, is to fetishize technology. And we just say, oh, we just need this, we got to add these tools, we got to throw this in there. And I hear fewer people saying, okay, what technology do we not need? And what's the actual problem that we're solving? And what technologies are solving a need to have problems versus nice to have problems? And that sort of makes me, frenzies worry me. If we look in the last 25 years, we've been through a lot of bubbles and a lot of frenzies. And a lot of those frenzies led to big crashes, and they led to big crashes because of this uncontrolled frenzy. And we're about to enter one. And it's super exciting because this is kind of, we're like in the industrial revolution of computers with this AI thing. But there's also Upton Sinclair's The Jungle. And kind of what happens when the frenzy goes too far. So to me, like, I fear that. I fear the kind of the resources and lack of focus and the harm, should there be any harm, more than like what trends I'm excited about. The one thing that Dana made me think about, so I use that savings analogy. But if you think about savings, and when you save for retirement, you're not just saving, you're also investing. And so I put money aside in a way that gives me interest in some form, some return. Maybe a more effective way to get knowledge management adopted and used is if it's viewed as a vehicle that enables an investment, and that actually has it's a savings that creates an ROI, as opposed to savings that's just a depository. Because depositories, that's like your basement. You never go down there. Your 401k plan, you hope to watch it grow. Those are two different kind of savings accounts.
I love your
So what am I
analogy.
excited about? I'm excited about investing. I'm less excited about, how can we create an investment mentality and actually have this information sum to more than the inputs, that the outputs sum to more than the inputs.
Wonderful. Yeah, I love how you get us very real analogies, the 401k investing, right?
Yeah.
Thank you for making that real.
I
Go
have
ahead,
to, that's
Emily.
what I do in the classroom.
I do. We've often said kind of that this is an insurance policy. Like this is a little bit of a, like, if someone were to leave, you still have that knowledge and, kind of how do we store that? But I much prefer, I love the investing mindset because I do think a lot of this is, the generations to come, like even kind of writing things that other people will be able to use and build from and then actually innovate from as well. So,
People typically buy insurance because the regulator makes them buy it. They don't buy I mean, there's few people that they're like, they just love insurance. Let me just buy every policy I can.
totally.
Most people are like, shoot, my mortgage company says I have to get earthquake insurance, which reminds me I have to renew mine. So I do it. So I don't love the insurance orientation.
Yeah. No, I think the investing is it's more appropriate and it's also what I think actually the benefit of it. So, I love all these examples. The one other one I just wanted to add that I'm particularly excited about is this centralization of knowledge. Like I know we have a lot of, and with across companies, there's, knowledge all in Slack and in Confluence and Jira and in Figma. And, there's just all kinds of Google Docs. There's knowledge everywhere. So this idea of really bringing that more centrally into a space where you can access it is exciting to me.
Well, with that, Emily, I'd love to turn it over to you. Emily is our co-founder and CEO of Pair Up, which is the host of this webinar, and she has a lot of background and information on knowledge sharing and AI. So I wanted to give her the opportunity to share all the exciting things that the Pair Up team is working on. And Emily, I will turn that over to you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, we'll just give you a little bit of a highlight reel of a few of the ways that we're addressing some of the things that we've been talking about today. And I'll just also make a plug that if you are up for talking more, we'd love to meet you and hear more about your needs and experiences with this, and also talk more about some of these questions as well. But just to give you a little bit of a window into some of the ways that we're solving for this. So we really do believe a lot of knowledge is stored within people and within organizations. And so one of the things that we've been building out and finding a lot of value in for companies has been being able to search the right experts across an organization or the right people who may hold that knowledge. So this is just a quick example of you seeing someone asking, I'm about to build a pivot table, who in the company may have experience with this, being able to go into the system. The system will digest. These are a couple people who may know more about this. It gives you more context about why and the experiences that they've had, and then the system can go in and help connect you to those right people based on your needs, and be able to really quickly access them in a way that's also, we have kind of a process of which it's not burdensome to them if they're too busy as well. Another way that we are solving for kind of the centralization of knowledge is that we can, if someone's, let's say they're trying to figure out the status of a project, our system can go through, we ingest the different databases that companies are using and work with their security protocol of what they want shared or not shared. And then we can go in and have, someone who's asking about what's the status of this project can go in, they'll get a synthesis of it. They'll be able to see the different documents where it may be stored and some of the competing information. And then they'll also be able to see, these are a few people who have more context about this project if that's not sufficient. So talk to Daniela and Alessia and Jonas, who may know more about this as well. So this is kind of how we can show a little bit of both. The one other piece I just want to show you here feature-wise is that, and we've talked a lot today, and June's brought up a lot about this tacit knowledge, which is really core to our differentiator from others out there. And so one of the, let's say that I'm trying to figure out a way to document a Java library. I don't really want to post on a public Slack channel that I don't know how to do that, because it may look like then I don't know how to do my job, but I genuinely need to know. And so I can go in, ask that question. And then if someone we are able to then target people who may know that answer, who could quickly go in within Slack or Teams and type the answer very quickly, share that, and then we will document that so that if other people have that same question, we'll share that with them. We have a lot of psychological safety protocol you can see here of saying like 12 people are needing this answer right now, and ways to kind of help to make it still safe to ask those questions and get quick answers, or to connect people if more elaboration is needed as well. So these are some of the ways that we're kind of doing that and storing that knowledge. We also have a lot of, if you like to nerd out around data, there's a lot of fun data and information that we can share. I think for me, the piece I'm most excited about is understanding gaps in knowledge, understanding what are the questions that people have, what are the documents and resources you can see here that are most utilized, what are the teams that are actually doing the same projects but don't know that they're doing the same projects and should be connected and should be knowing that they're out there and connecting to the right people. So there's a lot of fun data there. And then also, as I mentioned, the goal is, and Jonathan, you were mentioning too, is seamlessness. Like, how do we make this just right where you are? And so we do have integrations to just help meet you in those systems and help to make that process as seamless as possible and not another system to go to, which we know people don't have time to do. So if you are interested in talking more, would love to hear your insights and thoughts too, just what you're seeing. I'll just give a very quick flag and then I'll close out, but there's a survey that we're putting out right now too, to really understand how knowledge is sharing and happening across companies. And so what are your needs and what are the gaps? So I know we'll put it in the chat and also we'll follow up on the email, but we are then building out this report of kind of the state of knowledge sharing across organizations with all anonymous data, but just giving a sense of what are some of the needs and gaps out there. And if you fill out the survey, which only takes 1 minute, we will then give you kind of the exclusive report. So please, if you're up for it, being part of it, please let us know. And also, again, happy to connect more, would love to speak to folks individually too, to just hear more about your needs and give you more of an in-depth demo. This was just a little bit of a fly through, but share more about how we're solving for problems. So yeah, thank you, Taylor, for we've got more in context in there with the survey, as well as an email if you want to learn more. And thank you. And I'll just, before you close out, Tanisha, I just want to say thank you so much on behalf of PARP to our panelists for being part of this, and just, it's such an important and timely conversation. And we're so grateful for each of your expertise and practice. So thank you for being with us doing this, and also to our amazing moderator, Tanisha, who's also just been such a mentor and advisor to us. And we're so grateful for you and your leadership too. So thank you all for doing this. And I'll pass it back to you, Tanisha.
Thank you, Emily. Well, I will just say I really enjoyed the conversation. Again, another thank you to all of our panelists, Jonathan Laval, Dana Tessier, June Chen, and Emily Harburg. I'll just say a couple of things that really stand out to me as we walk away from this conversation. So one, knowledge management may not sound sexy, right, in the world of business, but there's a lot of interest and passion based on the questions that we received, the number of registrants we had for this. And what we have named here is knowledge management is a core problem. It continues to be a problem that organizations navigate. And when organizations do it well, it can become a competitive advantage in some ways internally. So there's a business case around it. I did want to name that some of the stats that I shared at the beginning, and I know the team at Pair Up has many more. We can share the reports if anyone wants those and wants to reach out to the team. So this is a problem. There's an opportunity. There's lots of opportunity for how the problem can be addressed. And the Pair Up team is really trying to tackle that from both a human perspective and a technology perspective, with AI, right, as a tool to advance the process, to advance the experience. So for those of you that are thinking about how do we enhance and elevate our organization effectiveness, how can knowledge sharing be a tool in which we do that? We mentioned things around storytelling, the importance of measurement, and then Jonathan hit us with a banger around this is not just a nice to have anymore, it's a need to have. And a need to have for specific organizations, right? Depending on your culture and your work processes. And then Dana also highlighted this is an organizational discipline at the end of the day. So I will just encourage you all to not leave the webinar with lingering questions, or as you walk away with more ideas, just walk away and say, okay, we'll continue to do things in the same way we've been doing it. reach out to the Pair Up team, partner with other organizations, get your questions answered so that you, your teams, and your organizations can be more effective. So I will close so we can be on time today. And again, just thank you to the Pair Up team for hosting this amazing panel.
Thank you all so much. We'll follow up over email. Thank you again. And have a wonderful day.